Brian, the big question is, should we expect a Fed-backed digital dollar anytime soon?
Well, it seems like Fed officials right now are on the fence about whether or not they want to issue a digital U.S. dollar. And for those that are unaware of how this would work, obviously the United States Federal Reserve, in addition to the Treasury, mint physical bills. But at some point, because so many people are taking digital transactions through Apple Pay or through QR codes, whether or not the Fed could issue its own wallet where you would have digital currency that you could use at your 7-Eleven, at your grocery store, at the clothing store. But the Federal Reserve is saying pump the brakes for right now. There are a lot of concerns about issuing a digital currency like privacy. If the Fed uses some sort of blockchain technology, people might have concerns about the Fed knowing where you're using those individual transactions at an individual basis. Then, of course, there's also the concerns about whether or not that would get banks upset, because obviously if you have your own digital wallet that the Federal Reserve is issuing, that could be pulling customer deposits from where they might park them otherwise at a bank. So we heard from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell in testimony last week saying that they're not going to move forward on any sort of U.S. digital dollar unless they have the explicit blessing of Congress itself. And then you also heard from Randall Quarles, who's a Fed governor who spoke earlier this week. He said, quote, the fundamental question of what are we trying to do with this is not clearly answered. He later said, I don't see an urgent flaw in our system that a central bank digital currency would fix. And that's a pretty lukewarm approach to the U.S. digital dollar. So it seems like for right now, the Fed's saying we're looking at this, we're experimenting with it, but we're far from announcing that we're actually going to do this.
Is there, I'm trying to get my brain around this, and I don't have the brain capacity you have, but we have a dollar and we've got Bitcoin. Why would we even need a U.S. digital dollar? We already have fintech systems to allow.
Yeah, absolutely. And one reason for that might be because there's just competition in the space. When you look at the European Central Bank, you have Christine Lagarde saying they already have plans to get something launched in terms of a digital euro within 4 years. You have Facebook's Libra project, which, by the way, is now called Diem. That's going to be a project that they're trying to also use to have more digital use of currency. The trend here right now is that we're going to a more cashless society. At the same time, the Federal Reserve has said we're not going to eliminate cash. And I think the European Central Bank and other central banks that are playing around with their own digital currencies like Mexico, like Sweden, they've said the same thing. Cash is not going to go away completely, but using digital currency would have some sort of implications for the central banks themselves. Think about negative interest rate policy in the Japanese and also the European central banking systems. They have negative interest rates that penalizes people for parking money at a bank. It would be more effective for them to transmit those negative interest rates if they were already having those direct lines into customer wallets, which have digital euros or digital yen, for example. I think that's why you have a lot of central banks that are interested in it. Obviously, we don't have negative interest rates here in the United States, but there is something to be said that digital currencies also increase the effectiveness of central bank policy, something that, of course, at a broad level, every central bank will be interested in.
Brian, you mentioned some of the other countries that are also looking into this, or other central banks, I should say. Where do their efforts stand right now?
Well, for right now, it's all over the place. So you have the likes of China, for example, the People's Bank of China. They're already piloting the use of a digital renminbi with users in, I believe it's Shenzhen, where they're doing pilots. They're already dropping lucky users amount of money into a digital wallet that they would be downloading onto their mobile phone and trying to see how they use it in transactions at the store, at the grocery store, at clothing stores, and the like. Whereas in the United States, all they're doing right now is just testing possible use cases for a digital dollar. Right now, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston is working with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Obviously, a lot of brain power in both of those two institutions, trying to work together to see where in practice the US dollar might be able to try to do the same thing. And then you have central banks that are kind of in the middle. Like I said, the European Central Bank, which has done a lot of its testing already and said that it's already trying to investigate possible uses of models that they've already tested. Even in Mexico, they already have the use of a QR code where, again, they're also trying to test out the use of it on the ground. So it's all over the place. The Federal Reserve has said they don't care to be first in this space, and especially when the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. You want to try to minimize the amount of changes that you do to that currency. But of course, the Federal Reserve is saying because everyone else is paying attention to it, so are we.